I mean, you could take a sip of your tea. I did hit play, though.
I'm ready.
Okay, so the women in the group want to train to run 100 miles, right? But you've given them a training plan with a bunch of silly exercises on it and not a lot of running. Explain yourself.
All right, here's the deal. If you're weak in your hips and you start upping your volume, you are going to get injured. One of the reasons you have to up training volume so slowly on a lot of plans is that you are using the running to get strong. And that takes more time. And you're also not going to train out to 100 miles ever. If you're running a marathon, you could do a 22-mile long run. That's almost a marathon. You're not going to do that percent of 100 miles in training. You're not even going to do a 50-mile run in training, unless you run a 50-miler just to get your confidence up. Otherwise, long runs stop around 30 miles. A lot of plans, they stop around 26. There isn't a lot of purpose in going longer. So you've got to do other things to get strong enough to get through a 100-miler first. Second, injuries suck. Injuries suck. Half the people I know who've gotten to their first 100-miler have missed a huge portion of training because of an IT band problem, a shin splint, a stress fracture, a hurt foot that was a repeat use injury, all kinds of tendinitises, hip problems, low back problems. All that stuff is taking time away from training. When we're close to your first 100-miler, we can't be taking weeks off from training because you got an itis. So right now we're building that base of strength that will maintain, and we're going to be doing months of it. So you have so much strength that even if you miss a couple weeks of that, it's going to maintain. So that you can stay uninjured, and when we're really close to the race, you won't be missing key and crucial training because you're injured, which is what happens to most people within 2 months of their first 100. And I've seen a lot of people do it within 2 months of their first marathon or 50-miler. We're also going to be keeping weekday runs a little bit shorter than a lot of plans call for. We're not going to try to build total weekly volume by bringing up weekday runs, while we're also building out the long run. It's usually a recipe for getting injured and usually ends up requiring a lot more time off. If you are a person who wants to go and race a 50-miler and then race your first 100, and you are a person that's confident that you can go run 80 and 90-mile weeks, this project is not probably the best design for you. This is for people who are trying to get out to a distance that terrifies the crap out of them, or at least scares them a little, that they're not even confident they can do. They're just going with faith and trying their best. So the first goal is actually to keep everyone in the project as much as possible not injured. The goal is not to make you guys elite. The goal is to make you guys cheerful and not injured.
So are you saying your super boring, pain in the ass strength exercises are going to keep people from getting injured?
Nothing is 100%. You could still fall right on your face. You could still get a repeat strain injury, but this is a huge, huge reduction in your risk if you just stick to these exercises. I, having been an idiot in many, many different sports and having been through physical therapy for many things, torn ankle ligaments, partial Achilles tear, there is no ACL in my left knee. I skipped the surgery. It was like 16 years ago. So that I have to be extra careful with, and the lateral ligament there has a give. You can actually run on no ACL if you do the posterior chain stuff. I've had patellar tendinitises. I've had a list of things, including some low back injury to the discs from landing snowboard jumps too hard, an SI joint that doesn't love me if I don't do all my exercises for that. So you guys get the benefit of I've broken myself. And I know what happens when I skip these exercises, and what happens is time off running.
I see. So, the word on the street is that you ruined everybody's long run today. It sounds like people are sore from the exercises and you made everybody do hills the day before a long run. Explain yourself.
It's true, and there's going to be a lot more of long run where everyone's tired. And most training plans don't call for that. Most training plans, and if you look at people running, if you look at women who are able to make the Olympic trials marathon, because they can run a sub 2:46 marathon, you will not see a long run being done right after doing heavy strength like hill repeats the day before, or even heavy intervals the day before. Because your long run, you're practicing your marathon pacing. If you're a very fast 50-mile runner, and even some of the, you'll probably see some of the very top 100-mile runners do this, the folks that go and they go run Western States, and you know, they're women, and it's 18 hours after the start, and they're at the finish line. They're not worried about that 30-hour cutoff. They're people who are that fast. they're practicing their speed when they do their long run. They're practicing their actual race pacing. They're doing it fresh. And they're going to train 90-mile weeks, and they're going to peak out sometimes well over 90 miles a week. I'm not going to do that. If you're in this project, you probably aren't going to do that. That probably just isn't in what you can do with your time or what you can do with your body right now. And the good news is you don't need to do that. What you need to do is to learn how to manage this jog and hike pace. And your 100-mile is going to be for the cutoffs. With everyone in the group is going, I don't know if I can finish. I don't know if I can make cutoffs. That's why I'm here. Well, you have to manage tired legs, because the second half of 100 is all tired legs. You have to get very good at not changing your gait much when you're tired.
Wait, are you saying when you run 100 miles, your legs get tired?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's legs get tired. The question is, does it change your form so badly that you injure yourself? Do you have enough hip strength and stability to not injure yourself? Because if you don't start destroying your knees and ankles, if you still have primary stability, we'll cover skin lubricants for feet in later videos to keep the feet intact, but if you can do that and you're okay with the tiredness, you can march out one of these things. So you get 17 to 22 minute miles as an average for most of the races we're looking at. 17 to 22 minute miles. That's you can walk over half of your 100-mile and make it. So your long run right now is you practicing race pace. You are actually doing that, and you're actually practicing the second half. If you're thinking, oh my God, I can't even get to a 50-miler yet. Well, yeah, of course. This is very early. Like, we're looking at fall hundreds, and for some of you, maybe it will be a fall 50-miler or a summer 50-miler. Maybe you won't in this calendar year get to 100. Maybe you will. But either way, you're practicing that second half, that part that you never get to in long run, and you're going to get very good at that. There will be some down weeks, but when you learn to manage your tired, beat-up legs because you ran up and down the hill a whole bunch, you learn, and then you go to your long run, starting slower and taking it easy. You're learning how to pace appropriately in a 100-miler. You're practicing on your long run how to hike sections instead of just running until you're exhausted and collapsing and puking and have to stagger it out or DNF. But you're also managing that tiredness. You're getting very confident in your own body and in your own ability to keep going when you're tired. A lot of people are not, and they go to their first 50-miler and have not built up this confidence in managing that. And so they hit mile, 38 or 40, and suddenly the muscles really, really hurt. Their form starts changing, and those last 10 miles are horrible. And they're also not sure they're going to be able to make it through those last miles because they're not confident in their ability to manage tired legs. In a 100-miler, like, you're going to feel the tiredness starting on mile 40 or 50. You're going to feel it. And if you're very confident from months of having to do some hill repeats or having to do a medium run often the day before a long run, then you're going to be like, oh, yeah, this is how I always feel at long run. Oh, I just hike part of it, eat my snacks, keep going, or work on some techniques for practicing snacking on long run day 2. We're really early right now in training. Don't worry though, there's a plan for that. But mostly you've got to get confident that your body can be sore and be achy and still do this thing and keep going. And when you get used to it, it'll stop hurting as much. You'll be aware of it. You'll be aware that you're not going full out, that your top gear is gone. But you actually, after you do this enough, will not feel the same degree of pain and sore. Your body will learn to process it differently. It will become a more okay way that you feel. And there's still speed work on Tuesday. There'll still be some light weeks. You'll still get to have some runs when you feel good. It's not like you're going to be sore and hurting forever or on every run. But that's why those weekday runs are so, when I say don't do a bunch on Monday, do 3 miles very slow or don't do anything Monday. Don't run Friday. You are going into your hills with the rest day. And that's why we're not doing what a lot of plans do. We're never going to have, oh, it's Wednesday, I'm going to do 9 miles. Oh, it's Thursday, I'm going to do 10 miles. Oh, it's Monday. We're not going to do that higher volume on weekdays much at all. I mean, you can do what you want, but I never do that. Never have. There might be occasional 2-a-day cardio, but that's 6 months off. We'll worry about that when we get to it. But when there'll be like 2 miles jog before morning exercises and then still an afternoon run, that has huge value. But not yet. Not yet. You're already sore right now.
On the training plan, you have long run being about 3 hours. I cannot jog for 3 hours. What do I do?
Okay, that's what you do, especially if you're really sore from hills. You go, and you get out of your car and you walk for 10 minutes until your body feels warmed up a little. And then you jog. And maybe you jog for 5 minutes. Maybe you jog for 10. If you're walking up a hill hard enough that it's upping your heart rate and breathing, it counts as jogging. I know that's not jogging. That's how we count that. If you're walking, then you'd walk up the hill at a slower pace, just like a hiker would, so it's easier to manage. So if you walk half your long run because you're doing 10 minutes on and then 10 minutes of walk, that's fine. If you do 10 minutes of walking and 5 minutes of jogging and then 10 minutes of walking, that's fine. If you were to do that at a 100-miler that had a generous cutoff, as long as you got used to hiking also, as well as running, and you guys do have to get used to it, then you'd be able to make that cutoff. We're very early, so right now 3 hours, it's not very much. We're early right now. You're building some base, and you're building some strength. But it's completely okay to even be walking 2/3 of your long run right now. You'll slowly cut that down. You'll slowly get better. You'll slowly develop a better, more efficient shuffle jog that's just a little faster than a walk. Although, and there's this old guy that will run Oil Creek every year for a while, the 100-miler. This guy can walk between 16 and 17-minute miles, which makes the cutoff at Oil Creek. I think it's 32-hour cutoff. He'd figured it out. He'd have his trek poles and just fast walk. Never ran a step of the entire race and always generously made the cutoff and passed fast young people at the end who were staggering in misery. And he still looked the same as at the beginning. So, we say we're going to go run a 100-mile, but unless you're talking Tunnel Hill and Elite, you're not running 100 miles in a row. And so you need to practice all of the different ways that you're going to move your body forward so that all of them are familiar and doable for you.
So should I run as fast as I can for a couple hours, even if I then have to walk the last hour?
No.
Oh.
No. And in fact, we're going to have a long run where the whole goal is to run the second half faster than the first half. We're going to address that in another video so this doesn't run overly long, but that's going to happen really soon. Possibly this weekend.
What do you think the biggest reason for DNFs in a 100 is?
Starting too fast, which results in not eating enough. Because you know what happens is you taper, and everyone's like, oh, well, run what you feel. This is ultras period. Not eating is the leading cause of DNFs. Well, pacing too fast is the leading cause, and after that, not eating. And when you overpace and you just run what feels good instead of holding back a little, because holding back sucks and taper sucks. It's really hard. I've messed up races this way. You forget to eat. You forget to think about whether you have a hot spot on your toe that you should address. You start rushing through the aid station without changing socks because you just feel good right now. Well, you need to change socks and relube your feet before your feet start to hurt. You need to slow down and take walk breaks early in your race. The whole idea is to see if you take walk breaks early, how far can I get before I start to really hurt? How far? Because sometimes you can get out, pretty far in a race. In overpacing early, you're just going to pay for it so much. It's an ultra distance. There's a lot of time to make up for it if you go a little too slow. A lot.
So how does that correlate to what I should be doing in long run right now?
So in long run right now, your first hour should not have you pacing faster than your third hour. They should all be about the same. So if you do, say, 3 miles in hour 1, then you should do 3 miles in hour 3. But if you get to hour 3 and you do more distance in hour 3, that's good. But if then you can only do 2.5 miles in hour 3, you're doing badly. If you do 5 miles in hour 1 and almost 5 miles in hour 2, and then 3.8 miles in hour 3, you went out too fast. If at all your long runs you practice overpacing, you will overpace at your race. If you intentionally hold back early in your runs, intentionally, in order to run more evenly, or even have to then sometimes realize you held back too much. You got to run your last hour faster to get tired out properly. That's good. That's very, very good because you'll get that habit. And when you go to an ultra and your brain shuts off and you can't think, your autopilot from week in, week out of doing this is going to be to pace like a sane person that's going to finish. Very helpful. Because, oh my gosh, pacing is the hardest thing. It's still the hardest thing for me. Like 80 ultras later, I still have trouble with it.
Last question. Before I found this group, I was doing 4 to 4.5 hour long run, but that's not what your training plan says. Should I do 3-hour long run now?
No, go ahead and do the long run you're already doing. The 3 hours is a starting point chosen for the folks in our group who are the most beginner. If you're already comfortable at 4 or 5 hours, go ahead and do it. But still, what I said applies about trying to run your last hour as solidly as your first one. If you're not doing that, take a look at your pacing, because you're practicing a kind of pacing that is very likely to cause DNFs once you start going up your distances. You can overpace out to mile 20 or so of a 50K, and you can stagger out 11 miles. And you're not going to slow down horribly, and yeah, the last hour will suck. but the consequences aren't that big. But if you overpace a 100-miler and you hit mile 40 having overpaced, you have 60 miles to go. That is very hard. A lot of people hit mile 60 or 70, and that's you see the drops at mile 70. People will start staggering around 50, and at mile 70 they realize that they have an ultra distance left, and they quit. That's also, though, if you're running like a 30 calorie an hour deficit, it'll catch up with you eventually. You think you're on top of your eating. It's just a little bit too little every hour, and all of a sudden just calamity.
Another thing we're gonna get into,
But
right?
Again, another video. We're gonna get into that like repeatedly. There's so much approaches to how to calorie, so there's gonna be a lot of that. And some of you already know a little bit of it. But we're not gonna get much into regular day in, day out nutrition, other than I think you should, eat some vegetables. Try to limit the processed food, try to limit the refined sugar, sensible things, but I'm not a nutritionist. The things you eat during long run are terrible. The things you eat during races are terrible. I would never drink Coca-Cola unless it's night during a 100-miler, and then I will drink Coca-Cola. So we'll hit all of that. We'll hit all of that repeatedly.
I forgive you for ruining my long run.